Hey, welcome back to another Backyard Professor Chess video. I've been doing some research and study in the Yusupov Schach School chess lessons. Let me explain something about this that I didn't realize, and then we'll get to this fascinating diagram, this game that the world champion Emanuel Lasker was playing in 1900. Still relevant today completely. Artur Yusupov's chess course. Now, I have all 9 books on order. I have 6 of them, 3 of them are coming. Plus I have his chess lessons, which is over the top spectacular. These entire texts, the entire group of texts, was given the Boleslavsky Medal by FIDE. That is the World Chess Organization. The Boleslavsky Medal is the award for the best chess instructional material in the world, ahead of both Garry Kasparov and Mark Dvoretsky, 2 other people that you really should study. And I'm not trying to be hypocritical because I haven't studied them, but I have their materials. I just don't have the time for everything. I'm working on it. It's going to take a decade or so. In the meantime, I'm having fun learning chess and sharing what I'm learning with you through Grandmaster games and picking and choosing bits and pieces of both Jeremy Silman and now Artur Yusupov, and I will get to Garry Kasparov and Mark Dvoretsky, etc. This particular chapter showing Emanuel Lasker's endgame of one of the games is really remarkable when we look at this. Now, I just made a video about the 2 games from Yusupov and Silman on the idea, the power of the passed pawn. Let's continue the passed pawn theme for a moment with a completely different look. Look at the power of this punk little pawn. Not only is he commanding the attention of the king, who is blocking him from promoting, but the rook is going to make dang good and sure he can be destroyed once he gets there and promotes. And the queen is also making sure, no, little guy, you ain't going nowhere, no how. Not happening, not in my house. Just take a moment and appreciate this. That rook is commanding all kinds of power. And notice that the promotion square is also covered by the bishop. The entire remaining black army doesn't give a flying flip about anybody else except that pawn. Just absorb that. The psychology is critical here. When you get a passed pawn, this has to be the response of your opponent or you're going to promote, right? So this is powerful. Right now on the board, I mean besides the 2 kings, the most powerful piece, paradoxically, is this pawn. That's worth recognizing. Get a pawn on the 7th rank and watch your opponent react to you. This gives you full, total initiative and power if you play it right. There's still many ways to go wrong. I just think it's important to emphasize at this point, since I'm trying to focus on pawns, for us to realize, really, that's worth taking a moment and setting up on your own chessboard and just look at this. Now, this particular position is poignant with power for both sides, however. And that's what makes this worth looking at in a little bit of depth. Because you have the passed pawn, and it is your move, it's white to move here. You don't waste your time here. That is a waste of time. Why? Because in looking at the position, you recognize something extremely interesting, that the queen will then simply eliminate the problem. And that's not what you want. This is way too passive, absolutely unrelated to any of the theme that's involved here. Yeah? So forget that. That is not your objective. You're not lost. You're not to the point to where you say, well, you know, I can't figure out what to do and therefore I'm not going to do it. No, you don't want to take your rook and come over here to guard your king either. Because look, just observe, all black has to do is take one move and get that queen down there safely. If he can find a way to get rid of that rook, he's got checkmate. Just one move. So white cannot afford to make any mistakes. It's that critical. So this is tense. Yeah. This does precious little to help you either. Because then the queen will simply take the pawn, of course. And then you exchange queens. You exchange queens, and black is up the piece. Right? So you blew it as white, if that's what you're thinking. So you have to be careful, because this game can turn on a very fine hair. Right? So this is a critical, tense game here. Very, very instructional, very, very interesting. White, as Emmanuel Lasker, the world champion, does an incredible move. With his rook on the file, he zips all the way up there and goes check. Again, what this does is it should, in our minds, magnify even greater the pure power of a passed pawn on the 7th rank. Because now you can use that little buddy that has all the attention of the entire army, can now be utilized in an initiative offensive attack in a tremendously wonderful way. That's powerful. Check. Now what? You have to do something as black. Let's assume, for the moment, that black takes the pawn. Yeah? The power of the passed pawn is over now. It's done. Whew. Dodged that bullet. Except for one defect. The rook takes the rook. And that is better for white. Yeah. It's a one-end game from here. Because you've got the queen and the rook, and you're up a pawn. A queen and a rook against a queen and a bishop, and you're a pawn up, gives white the edge. And it's pretty significant. You're Emmanuel Lasker. You're not going to lose this. Now, you and I I would probably lose this. That's why I'm trying to study endgames as best I can. But every time I go to study endgames, I find fascinating studies like this that are really critical, because I haven't emphasized pawns as much as I need to, because they are also a critical component of our chess. So that's not quite the right response, is what I'm saying. It gets rid of one problem, but introduces another. And it would definitely prolong the game. Well, black took the rook, of course. So there's no more problem with check here, yes? Now, white has a couple of options. This is not one of them. Oh, hey, I wanted to show you another variation. Whoops, I almost blew this. Hold on, I wanted to show you this. Hold on here. Just hold your horses, cowboy. Okay, on this one, if the king takes the pawn, then the rook takes the rook, and it's better for white, like I said. But if the queen takes the rook, oops, then you have checkmate. That's why this diagram is so full of tenseness. Great amount of energy, and you must be really precise or you can lose it that fast. So black has to pay attention also to details, because the queen, by moving to here, loses the guardianship of that square. So you have to calculate and observe which piece you want to use when you take other pieces. That's really important. And I suck at calculating, and I'm working on it. And it takes practice. It takes a lot of chess, and it really does take a lot of practice. You need to be good calculators so that you can see tactics also. And I suck at tactics too, but I am working on it. I'm improving somewhat. So when white went here, black took with the rook. Now it is white's turn to move. And this is what I was saying. No, forget all that noise. That's not critical. And yet it is critical, because it holds the key to black pulling a quick win out on a back rank checkmate. So you must be careful. White can't do anything passive, is what I'm trying to tell you. He must do a forcing move every time. And that forcing move is right there. Check. You go, whoa! What? Sacrifice the queen. Indeed. Yes. If black chooses an option of doing this, then white will simply take the knight, or take the rook and queen. And that is way better for white. So black is literally forced to take the queen. And now you can see it, can't you? Absolutely. What you do is you take the rook and you underpromote to a knight, check, and fork the queen. Ha ha! That's what Lasker did. Because if you promote to a queen, then black has the checkmate. Yeah? So not only do you have to watch all the careful nuances, be careful of which piece takes what, but you gotta be careful about what you promote to. In this instance, you lose the game promoting to a queen, and if you do what Lasker did and promote to a knight, then you win the game, because then, of course, the king has to move, you take it, and now we have a king-bishop against a king, knight, and 2 pawns, and white would win it. So this is one diagram. Oh, and I got this, I told you, I got it out of Build Up Your Chess, The Fundamentals, the first book in the Yusupov Schach School of Chess. I want to show you another diagram from an entirely different game that is truly fun to look at, with this idea of pawns. This particular game is also in Yusupov's book, the Build Up Your Chess, The Fundamentals. I forgot to tell you I'm in chapter 21, pages 202 and 203, for those of you who have this wonderful book. It's white to move, and again, I just want to point out the importance of this passed pawn. Look how many pieces are focusing on it. The king is blockading it, the knight is hitting it, the bishop is hitting it. The rook isn't hitting it yet, but he might be. And he's got the rook behind the passed pawn. Now, one fundamental principle about passed pawns: when and if you can, it is best, and of course all different positions might have a little bit different strategy, but as a ground rule, as a basis for operating with a passed pawn, put the rook behind the passed pawn. And if you're down in just rook games, if the other opponent's rook has to blockade the pawn, that takes the power of the opponent's rook away, right? It makes it passive while yours is considered active. So the rook behind the passed pawn is a fundamental rule that you should play for every time. There's times when you can't get it that way, and you can still push the pawn all the way in. There's always exceptions, but that is correct. And then, of course, the knight is also protecting it, and of course, the bishop is also protecting it. That pawn is so vital that 3 of white's pieces is protecting it and trying to help it promote, and 3 of black's pieces is fighting it. That's the power and importance of and it's on the 6th rank. If this little guy gets to here, that will completely turn the blood cold of the black player. This is K. Richter and a no-name in Berlin, 1930. We don't know the name of his opponent, but the game was thankfully recorded because this is so wonderfully done. White puts the knight to f5 check. Now here is an interesting thing that Yusupov says, and I want to read this so I get this right, because I want to explain a little bit of what it means, because I've seen this in other games before. I've seen it described, and through going through a lot of Grandmaster games now, it finally dawned on me what they meant, more or less, kind of. Right? I'm still a mere wannabe good chess player, so I'm still learning also. All good chess players learn all the time. Anyway, white wants to employ his well-coordinated forces fast in an attack before black can mobilize the rest of his forces. This is a mobile rook, but this one isn't. So why give him the time to get that rook in the game? Remember, the less pieces means there is a better chance of promoting your passed pawn. Now, at this point, when you get to the 6th rank with the pawn, all other plans go out the window. If you are trying to promote the passed pawn, all of your energy and strategy and tactics and efforts go into that little guy. Without question. On the 6th rank on, the game wins or loses based on that piece. That's how important it is. Just a lowly pawn. Really. And if you're fighting against a passed pawn, whatever other plans you had of a queenside attack or getting a tricky move to take a piece or whatever, all of that goes out the window. You must at all costs, and it might cost you a lot of material also, but you must stop that pawn. The entire game revolves around this guy. That's how powerful passed pawns are. They are worth an extensive study, and I will do more on passed pawns, I promise. They are as critical to grasp the background, the fundamental rules of the rook behind it, and so on and so forth, as rooks on open files are. I just haven't emphasized the passed pawns. It's a terrific subject, and I'll do more videos on it. So the first thing white does is check. Get the king to move. Now, black here does something interesting. Rather than passively come backwards, yeah, he's blocking the queening square. This is true. This is too passive. You're giving too much ground. What is a stronger move? Rather than simply, or that would be a complete debacle. That would be a blunder. I mean, yeah, push the pawn, baby. No, you don't want to do that. You'll end up with the king here again anyway, and then you're really stuck. You're in trouble, right? So black can't afford to be passive, and so he makes a strong move. Based on his position and in the situation he's in, that's good. Yes, approach the knight. Look, that knight is right up in here helping, or up in here helping cover the queening square. Threaten the knight. Absolutely, right? So that king move makes good sense. So I'm just pointing that out. So, and I'm going to take this from the book because his analysis is so good. I want to make sure I do this right. Well, okay, you put the king in check. Don't, you got him out of the way of the pawn. Don't do something silly and decide, oh, hey, look, there's a free knight. Don't do stuff like that. Don't be distracted. Well, I can centralize my pieces. Now, I've made a big deal about centralization. I know, and everyone does, I promise. Anyone who knows his chess knows that. But in this situation, centralization of forces is not nearly as critical as going ahead with your directive and get that pawn in. That is what you want to do. No question about it. Yeah. That's the critical point. So, and then, oh dear, black makes a huge mistake. He takes the knight. Now this position can go back and forth either direction. That's how tricky the position is. That was the mess. See, I told you, the knight is one of the pieces that can help, if he gets in here, to protect the queening square. So it is an important piece, and black recognized that, but at this juncture, taking it was the error. Better, by far, Yusupov says, would have been this, without question. Because not only are you stopping the pawn, but, I mean, he can even take that and queen, and then you just take it with the rook, if I remember right. Oh, no. Yeah, because had he done this, even if the pawn promotes, even if the pawn goes here and promotes, He's got rook h2 checkmate. Isn't that crazy? Black threw the game away. There's nowhere for the no, that's not true. I'm doing this wrong. Hold on. Okay, a fatal error in a one position. Black has reckoning simply on that's not checkmate though. The correct move was or bishop d7. Oh, I'm okay. Here's the other. God, I'm messing this up. I knew I was going to. I hate it when I do that. Here's the other point. Forget what I said about checkmating black with the rook. I misunderstood that. This one would have been spectacular before he promoted. Rather than take this, he said the knight e6 was much better. And then this queens, and then you've got this. Check, and you've got, and actually he'll take it. Oh, that's where it came from. He'll take that to stop, that's the queen. Yeah, that's where it came from. Now, am I reading the wrong line? He's got the fork, and then the knight takes the knight, and then the rook comes in and goes checkmate. Now that's checkmate. Yeah, I knew I had that. So black can win if he would have done it right. But unfortunately, he didn't. Yeah, that's how it went. I knew there was something there that I was missing. So anyway, knight e6, and then he had promoted, so I put that guy back. Actually, he is right here at this point, and he took it with the bishop. He blew it. He took it with the bishop. Dang it, man. And now, of course, pawn hits there, but he does not promote to queen. He promotes to knight. Under promotes, and that's checkmate. Interesting, isn't it? Fascinating. He checkmated him. Yeah, that is checkmate. So, and that's the power of a passed pawn. But the lesson here that I wanted to share that Yusupov talks about, and he has one more diagram. I'll do it another time because I don't want to make this video too long. I just wanted to give you the feel for the power of the passed pawn, but also just because you can promote, watch what piece to promote to. That's actually really important. In my chess games, I have never under-promoted. I've always just, hey, I got another queen. In this case, it would have been a mistake had he done the queen move. Because then he's got check. And there you go. You're out of a queen again. Oh, no, yeah, you're done. You're out of a queen. Yep. So you would have to take, whoop, and then the rook takes the queen, and the king can't take, and now you've got it. So the takeaway from this is, one, the real importance of the passed pawn, without question. Once it gets to the 6th rank, man, that's the piece to focus on for both sides. And when you promote, watch, carefully look at the position, because promoting to a queen is not always the best promotion. So anyway, there's your rather obfuscated, dorky analysis that I kind of muffed, but I actually figured it out. Anyway, there's your chess exercise for the day, the chessercise. And I want to do a little more with pawns because the subject is huge. Schmock, whoever, he wrote an entire book on just pawn structure chess. And I have that, but it's on my Kindle. I don't have it in print. I've got it on Kindle, and I've looked at it a little bit, and it has some valuable information on pawn structure, the pawn chains, etc., that I will share with you, because after all, let's face it, when you begin the game, there's 8 of these little guys, right? So yeah, they're the weakest piece at the beginning, and well, not necessarily even in the middle game, but in the end game, you get a pawn on that 6th rank, and all of a sudden it becomes the most powerful piece. That's fascinating. That's one of those cool paradoxes. This is what makes chess so interesting and exciting. The weakest can become the strongest. Yeah. So that's kind of fun. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. I have more to make. Hopefully I can make a few today and some tomorrow. So it's a good weekend. Oh, it's Martin Luther King Day on Monday. Let's celebrate one of our fallen heroes and appreciate the significance of his message to humanity. Not to any one particular nation. For we are nations, that is true. And we are proud of our nations, that is true. But there's a greater commonality that should be given priority. And that is to all people. Because we're all in this together as humanity. And that should be our priority. So anyway, there's your video. I will see you in the next chess video.